I guess that's a good entrance, right? That little bell that we just heard in the background. Hello and welcome to the Around the 412 Fantasy Football Show. This is Season 3, Episode 3 of the Around the 412 Fantasy Football Show. I'm your host, Smitty. With me, as always, are my co-hosts on top, Joe and Drew. What is going on, fellas?
What's up, man? Happy draft week.
Draft? Well, you got a draft that you're about to be doing during this show, from what I hear.
Yeah, man. I was picked for the Yinzers League. Shout out to those lovely ladies over there who also just got picked up by DK. So a lot of awesome things happening in the Pittsburgh podcast network there. But yeah, so they have a draft that starts in about 30 minutes. Should be able to find out what pick I have now. But yeah, we'll just do it live and make it happen all at the same time. So let's rock, man.
And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't touch on Drew's shirt this week as well, which we expect to be a weekly thing.
Oh, look at my man.
You can get that exact same shirt for yourself at DC4L Customs. Hit them up on Twitter for your own custom needs as well. But you can be rocking that exact same shirt while you're watching this show, while you're watching the Steelers play on Sunday, which is coming up rather soon, fellas. The preseason is over. The Steelers escaping pretty much injury-free. So thank God for that. Some teams were not so lucky, and let's start this episode on that note. Unfortunately, let's talk about a division rival that got hit pretty hard in the backfield. J.K. Dobbins goes down with a torn ACL. Seemed pretty severe the moment that it happened. When you saw the still shot of it happening, that was confirmed the following day that it was indeed a torn ACL. Obviously, terrible things. We wish nothing but the best for J.K. Dobbins going forward. But for this season, how does that impact that Ravens backfield? I mean, before you guys chime in here, I got to think Gus Edwards all of a sudden becomes like a fringe top 15 running back 2 type player.
Yeah, I mean, Gus Edwards is going to get a ton of run coming into the season now. And it's going to be interesting to see if they use him in the passing game a little more, considering he's only had 18 receptions in the 3 or 4 years that he's been in the league. But if they decide to go a different direction, it sounds like that Tyson Williams that they've had. Was he on the practice squad last year, or is he a rookie?
He was a rookie last year.
Yeah.
So he's probably going to come in and get some more run in the passing game. I don't think that Edwards is going to do much besides maybe some dump off screens or just short passes if Lamar's in trouble. So there's going to be a lot of changing in that backfield. I think it's going to have some effects on Lamar as well. The dynamic play of Dobbins, I feel like, helps him, and a lot of teams are going to start to cone in on Lamar, so that might hurt his stock a little bit, in my opinion, compared to the other quarterbacks at the top.
Yeah, it's a shame to see him go down like that because, I mean, you saw him come on at the end of last season with Dobbins, and he kind of got held back a little bit as far as like early season production. You thought like with the second round, he was a second round pick, so they were going to use him pretty early and often. Something like a Jonathan Taylor where like immediately right away was getting a lot of work, but kind of slow played it a little bit. I know in one of our previous shows, Drew, you talked about how he hadn't had 15 carries in a single game last season. We're looking forward to him taking that next step, obviously in a pretty challenging AFC North division, but with a team that's a primary running offense. I mean, that's a huge blow. Can Gus Edwards take on that full load? I think it remains to be seen. They tend to cycle a lot through different running backs in Baltimore anyway. I mean, even when Mark Ingram was there, they were still rolling through a lot of players. So I don't think that he is going to, he being Gus Edwards, just become this bell cow, rushes and takes all of the touches away, but he is going to be that first person that gets a crack at it, and they'll see what sticks. But yeah, they've got some young blood on the roster, a lot of turnover, so it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out for him.
So where do you guys view Gus Edwards, though, in terms of his fantasy impact? I mean, how comfortable would you be if he's like your flex? I would feel very good about that. But like RB2 value, do you think he returns that even, or are you lower on him than I would say the consensus?
So I think on volume alone, he's going to approach that RB2 status. My biggest concern, like I said, is he's straight up the middle between the tackles type of runner. He's not going to spread the field sideline to sideline. And I think that's going to hinder their offense a bit. So they are going to work in some other guys to kind of keep that balance, because you can't just keep running the same play right up the middle. We're not running Derek Watt on 3rd and 1 back-to-back plays. Like, it's just not going to work for them. So I'm concerned that even though I think he's going to get 20 carries a game, he's going to be this straight line runner, and there's not going to be much variety in their offense.
Yeah, I think for me, if I'm thinking about players that like he is currently getting drafted around, so if we look at like, I would think he's not quite at the Chris Carson, DeAndre Swift tier for me. David Montgomery, not quite yet. I don't think he's that fourth round guy that J.K. Dobbins would have been. To me, he falls into that more like the Josh Jacobs, Mike Davis, like sixth round kind of player. I don't think, I mean, he is a backup, so it's like he doesn't have that same dynamic skill set that you would have saw from the starter. He obviously gets a bump in his value because he now takes that lead back role, but I think it's going to be more of a committee style approach, mostly because of what you're saying with the lack of pass catching ability. They were hoping, and I think a lot of Dobbins' ADP was baking in more production from like a passing perspective, but I don't see that happening for Edwards.
Yeah, how about, let's touch on Tyson Williams real quick, just because it's a crazy story. Beefy in the comments mentioned BYU legend Tyson Williams. He played at 3 different schools, North Carolina, South Carolina, ended up at BYU, tore his ACL, I think, the 4th game there of his senior year, and then obviously went undrafted. He was on the Ravens practice squad last year, and now it looks like he's at least going to have some of an impact. Like I mentioned, Justice Hill being there, but it looks like he's on the depth chart above him. So like he's the next in line behind Gus Edwards. And you would think based off the role that Gus Edwards had while J.K. Dobbins was there, this guy's still going to have some impact in that backfield.
I think Justice Hill's nursing an injury as well. So he's going to have, I think he's going to have little impact to start the season while they work him back. He hasn't practiced or played in the preseason very much. So,
right. So do you guys think, I mean, this could be a stupid question, but let's just address it just for anybody that's in like a really deep, say it's like a 14-team league. Is Tyson Williams somebody that you'd be considering deeper in like a 14-team league or maybe even a 12? Like, is he even on your radar in redraft leagues?
In redrafts, I wouldn't go anywhere near him unless you want to handcuff Gus Edwards. There's been a lot of running back injuries to start the season. You never know what can happen with him. If he goes down, they're not going to bring in a guy like Gurley or Le'Veon Bell. I think Tyson Williams is going to get a lot of run if something were to happen to Gus Edwards. So if you want to handcuff, maybe I'd consider it, but I wouldn't just draft him straight in a 14-team league either.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment for sure. I mean, that is very much like a lottery ticket. He probably will get some game action, but it's never going to be a point where he's going to be startable without another injury to that offense. So the deeper into the leagues that you go, you are looking for those lottery ticket type players, but I don't think that value has been established just quite yet.
Right. Okay. Let's move around to some other injuries then. Drew, you put some of these names on here. So you got Courtland Sutton. I know that he was somebody, obviously, this show, you can go back to listen to the first 2 episodes, very high on his teammate Jerry Jeudy. Maybe a little bit in part due to we're not sure how Courtland Sutton is going to be able to start at the beginning of the season, maybe a little slow coming back from that torn ACL. He was also nursing some other injuries. I know he had like the shoulder issue as well, but you put Courtland Sutton on here. What's the reason that you put him on the list?
I wanted to talk about how good he looked in that preseason. Yeah. So he was cut very well. He looked fearless out there. He didn't look like a guy that was worried about that contact around his knees. And it kind of made me think about 2018 when Cooper Kupp tore his ACL. There was a lot of talk about him coming back in 2019, and he looked the same way that Sutton looked. And he came out with like a 94-catch, 1,100-yard season with 10 touchdowns. And I thought that was a good assessment to talk about because the Rams offense was supporting 2 fantasy-relevant wide receivers during that time with Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. I think that the Broncos are starting to look like a 2019 Rams with Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton as possibly 2 fantasy-relevant wide receivers.
Yeah, I'll give you that. You got me a little bit nervous when you said 2019 Rams. I don't know if I go quite that far, but
fantasy-wise,
absolutely.
Catch 1,100, 1,200-yard receivers back then, and I mean, Woods suffered a little bit in the touchdown production. So I think that if you're looking at those 2 players, I think Sutton would take on the Cooper Kupp role and maybe score more touchdowns. But I think Judy's going to have more explosive type of plays than Sutton.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the person that this impacts the most actually is going to be Noah Fant. He's obviously injured right now. That just came out today. But if you're thinking about like, who do I want in that lower tier of tight ends that I think is going to break out, like Noah Fant is always one of those guys that gets mentioned. He's an athletic freak. He's really done well. We talked about it a couple episodes ago too, where it's like, even when one of those guys has been out, he hasn't been able to put up the production. And part of it they thought was maybe just like, like rookie wall, but then it happened again last year. And it's like, all right, like they don't really utilize him that much in the offense. So having both of those guys, that's who I would anticipate being the target leader for that team. So having Bridgewater, I think he could support 2 fantasy wide receivers, but I think that's, for me, that makes having Sutton back in and looking good, that's a fade sign for me.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Bridgewater because I was going to bring up Bridgewater's impact on that as opposed to if it were Drew Lock. I mean, you look at Bridgewater, obviously didn't put up the greatest numbers in Carolina. I know like people want to attribute his success there that he did have to it being in Joe Brady's offense. Like everybody just wants to say he was the reasoning behind the start that Teddy Bridgewater had in Carolina, but he did support Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore, as we said, as 2 fantasy relevant receivers. Do we see that happen again with 2 more talented guys in Denver, such as Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton? So it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah.
So you also had on here, Drew, the whole T.Y. Hilton, Carson Wentz situation. And also, I mean, obviously not from a fantasy standpoint necessarily, but Quentin Nelson was dealing with an injury too, along with Wentz. They both seem to be on the right path. However, with one good news going on in Indianapolis, of course, that can't happen without some bad news happening to them as well. It seems like with the way that their training camp and preseason has gone. So T.Y. Hilton, I'm not sure how fantasy relevant he was going to be this year, but maybe that makes guys like Carson Wentz less. I don't know how fantasy relevant he was going to be either. But you look at some of the other weapons, maybe this just really increases the volume that we could see for a guy like Michael Pittman Jr. How do you see this whole thing playing out?
Yeah, so T.Y. Hilton's dealing with a disc issue in his neck.
Yeah.
And this is actually a similar injury that Peyton Manning had when he was leaving the Colts at the end of his tenure there. He could potentially miss this entire season. He could potentially miss 2 weeks. There's no idea what's going to happen with him. I think that it's significant because there's going to be a lot of target share that's going to leave T.Y. Hilton. There was a lot of talk during camp that Wentz and Hilton were kind of bonding together and doing very well together, but Wentz is going to start the season without him, and I think that Pittman is going to get a lot of target share and maybe an uptick in Zach Pascal's target share as well.
Joe, do you have anything else to add on that? Although I should say as well, Zach Pascal, by the way, he's been like very hot and cold, right? Like we see him have games randomly, like the one that he had in Pittsburgh in 2019, but there's been no consistency to his game. But maybe he is, one of the guys that benefits here. But go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I just think it's going to be really interesting to see, like, the Colts, I think, are a better running team than passing, but you bring in Wentz, you're expecting him to throw the ball a little bit more, but who's going to step up and really take over that depth chart? There's not really, outside of Pittman, anybody that scares me. T.Y. Hilton's past his prime, so it's like I don't think that he holds too much fantasy relevance. It's almost a nice thing, like, as like a fantasy player to know that he's hurt, because then he's one of those names like, oh, like T.Y. Hilton, come on, like, should I draft him? Maybe. But having that injury, it really gets rid of it. But it'll be interesting to see how they deploy their tight ends. I mean, Jack Doyle has had fantasy relevance in the past. Mo Alley Cox, some people think that he's going to do some things this year. Don't really see it, but maybe they get an uptick in targets. But someone that I would keep my eye on is like Paris Campbell. Like I think Paris Campbell's super talented. Having that opportunity, maybe he's someone that can make a flash in the pan. But yeah, I don't know. There's no one really that's inspiring to me in that wide receiver room. Good players, but I'm just not seeing it.
So Tyler brought up a good point about Nyheim Hines, who actually, like, according to him himself, has said that he's actually been running routes as a receiver, and he wants to continue to do that. So that would be interesting to see if they utilize him that way, maybe have him and Jonathan Taylor on the field at the same time. The guy I was going to bring up, you just brought up, Paris Campbell. It's going to be interesting to see how they manufacture touches for him, though, because I don't view him as a traditional wide receiver. He's almost like, I feel like the guy that we talk about a lot with that type of mold is like a Laviska Shenault, where he does a lot of work behind the line of scrimmage. They'll get him the ball out in space and just let him do it. A lot of screen plays, and maybe that's how he would be utilized as well, just manufacturing those touches. But anything on Nyheim Hines? Why did he say Drew, your guy?
Because I hate him. And
okay.
Okay. I don't want to see him on the field at all. It sucks. Him and Jordan Wilkins, bye.
You just want it to be the Jonathan Taylor show.
Yeah. I mean, if they want to give him some breaks, that's fine, but I don't want him to get any significant work that's just going to cause confusion in that backfield. And that's what he did last year.
Understood. Okay. And then I would say that this is on a good news aspect of this as well. Going to Dallas, and let's talk about Dak Prescott, who I feel like I just got tremendous value with in my last draft. He's no longer on the pitch count that he was on. It seems like all signs are trending toward him being 100%, no restrictions when the season opens up for them in Tampa Bay. You put Dak on here. Maybe you're just going to say the same things that I just summarized it with, but go ahead.
He's good to go. That's all you need to say. Dak's good to go. He's going to be firing the ball 40, 50 times a game, and he's going to put up numbers.
A lot of weapons in that offense. Joe, anything else to add on Dak?
No, I'm just happy for him. He's a really fun football player to watch and a great player to have on fantasy as well. It does so much for that Dallas offense, for Zeke, for all the receivers that are in that room to have him healthy. So to see him good to go, it's good for the sport, and I'm excited to see what happens.
I wanted to add one more thing quick back on the Colts. Wentz is starting to show people that as we get closer to the season, the COVID list is going to really start to be important to watch. So Wentz has been open that he's not vaccinated, and guys like that, even if they have a close contact, they got to stay out for five days out of the facility. And guys that are vaccinated, if they are asymptomatic, they're able to come back as if nothing happened. So we're going to start to see a lot of that pop up, and it's going to start to affect lineups as well.
Yeah, we've kind of touched on that very briefly because it's obviously not a topic that we want to spend, too much time on and get in these debates with people about in the comments. But the thing with it is it's going to have an impact. And we briefly touched on it, like when it's really like a close call. If you're talking about a coin flip decision, those things are going to come into play. Someone in our comments before we move on said traded Sony Michel and Juju for Corey Davis and Chase Edmonds after Dobbins got hurt. Panic move? ?
I mean, if it was, I like it. I think that Davis and Edmonds have a better season than Michel and Juju. I think that the running back situation in Los Angeles is very unclear. Juju is going to have an increased improvement, whatever you want to call it, from Chase Claypool. We know Deontay Johnson is going to be there. There's so many weapons in Pittsburgh that I don't think they're going to have three guys that have over 100 targets this season. So who's going to be the beneficiary? And Corey Davis has a great rapport with Zach Wilson. So to me, I think that the Corey Davis Chase Edmonds side wins pretty handily. I think there's a clearer path there for targets and for points. Don't get me wrong. Like, we'll see how that Rams backfield shakes out. And maybe, Henderson doesn't get as much work as we're expecting. It's not like a 50-50 split. And maybe, Juju does end up being the most productive receiver on the Steelers. But looking at it right now, give me the wide receiver one for a team that's going to be throwing the ball as much as we expect the Jets to throw the ball, and Chase Edmonds, who has his role clearly defined for an Arizona offense that should score a ton as well.
I think Sony Michel is being overhyped since that trade. And I think that Henderson's still going to be that guy. I'm just more concerned that Sony Michel is going to be a vulture. I think that he's going to take a lot of that goal line work, and that's concerning. But I'd rather have the guy that's going to get the passing work, and that's Darrell Henderson.
Well, yeah, I think it's with Sony Michel. I think that what is happening is he's the guy right now that's like the shiny new toy. Like, he just found a new landing spot where there was an injury that happened, and he's been anointed this lead back status because he was a former first-round pick. But he's got bad knees already. He's never shown to be that guy after his rookie. He had a pretty good rookie year in New England,
right?
No doubt. But since then, he really hasn't been that guy for them. And look at the backs that they've brought in to replace him, like all these plotting types. And at this point in his career, that's exactly what Sony Michel is. I think Henderson is much more dynamic. I'm not doubting that Sony Michel is going to get more work around the goal line, as you already alluded to. But I still think from a touch standpoint, Henderson finishes the year with more touches.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think that it's going to be game script dependent too. I think that if they're up big and they're trying to pound the ball, I think Michel's going to get a ton of work. But I think that if they're in some close shootout games, which is possible, I think Henderson's going to get more run personally.
Hey, the greatest show on turf is coming back to LA. That's what's happening for the Rams. Ken's in the comments. He just said, thanks for the advice on Twitter. Looking forward to meeting us in a few weeks. Absolutely. No, I don't think Joe's going to be there.
No, but I'll be in Texas, unfortunately. So
he'll be there in spirit.
I wish. Yeah.
Real quickly too, actually, let's touch on this because there was a acquisition made that maybe has some fantasy relevance. I know that there was some smoke with an Irv Smith Jr. hype train as of late, so he's going to miss the beginning of the season at least for now. Minnesota makes a trade today for Chris Herndon of the Jets, who at one point, was it in 2018 or 19, had like a great 6 weeks, and everybody was like, this is the next, tight end to really come on like this. where are we at with a guy like Chris Herndon? Does he give you any type of fantasy relevance at that position?
I mean, I'm not drafting him, but I'm definitely watching that situation. He has a lot of athletic ability, and I think that a change of scenery away from New York is just going to do him good. I wouldn't be shocked if he threw some outings out there that are going to surprise some people. The Vikings like to throw to the tight end, especially in the red zone. Kyle Rudolph has done some stuff in the past. And Irv Smith was actually playing very well in the preseason. There was a lot of people hyping him up as a sleeper. So I wouldn't be shocked if he throws some stuff out there that's going to surprise some people.
Joe?
I don't know, man. I mean, you have Jefferson. Thielen is their number one red zone target. I didn't think that there was a pretty clear path for Irv Smith to have a top 10 season. He could do it, but I think it was unlikely.
I'm thinking he has a streaming option.
I don't know. I just don't see it.
Option.
Maybe. I mean,
they're number
three. Pick up the playbook. Like, he's just like a lot of problems, and like he's getting a chance because he has this like good athletic profile. But I don't think that the Irv Smith, like, as soon as he comes back, like, he's irrelevant. Like, he's just another guy. But I don't think they're going to build the offense around him. He might have a game where he's open and gets a couple passes, but he's really just a stopgap until Smith can come back.
Irv Smith is high ankle sprain. Is that what he's dealing with?
Let me see.
I am not sure. I thought it was his knee, to be honest, but maybe it is a high ankle sprain.
Let's see. He's having surgery.
He's having surgery. It could be a meniscus cleanup.
It was a meniscus cleanup. You're right.
Yeah, so a meniscus cleanup, that could hold him out for quite a bit of time. I mean, there's no one else there that's going to line up at tight end. You're going to throw the ball at Tyler Conklin? I just think that there's potential there. I'm not.
Their number 3 receiver, also Chad Beebe, is out for a while as well. So it really depends. Like, but Dalvin Cook also plays a role in all of this, right? Like, we're talking about the receivers, and like really that Chris Herndon being the only tight end that's actually going to catch passes. But Dalvin Cook plays a role in that as well, and just really the way that the whole offense runs. Like, it's a run first team, and now at best, Chris Herndon's going to be the third passing option. I think he could do worse, but yeah, he's not somebody that I'm drafting. We'll see how it plays out. Should I drop Mike Williams for Tyrell Williams? That's interesting. Mike Williams is another guy that's gaining steam late here as we get into these this last week or so of drafting before the regular season starts. I mean, I guess I get it. He's always been a big play threat, former 7th overall pick. Obviously, second-year Justin Herbert's going to play into that as well. I think I
actually had a pretty decent preseason.
Yeah, and he's like the de facto number 1 on a really bad Detroit Lions team with a really, really bad wide receiving core.
Like Rashad Perriman too,
they got rid of Rashad Perriman after they guaranteed him like $3 million or whatever it was. Like, and he doesn't make the worst wide receiving group in football, but that's a different story. That's a tough one because it's like, do you want the best receiving option on the worst team or the number? I guess he still would be the number. I would say Austin Eckler is the number 2 pass catching option for them still.
And I would argue that Hawkinson is the number 1 guy in Detroit. So, I mean, you're really looking at number 2 or 3 for both teams.
I'm pretty high on Amon-Ra St. Brown as well.
I am too. But at least to start, like, Tyrell Williams is the de facto number 1 receiver, but great point by Joe bringing up that it's really TJ Hawkinson who's the number 1 pass catching option in Detroit for Jared Goff. It's close. I think I'm sticking with Mike Williams.
I would take Mike Williams too. I think number 2 in a better offense. I mean, they're somebody that would be like a last pick in the bench. To me, it's really what does the rest of your team dynamic look like? If you're looking for a home run pick, like we know what Mike Williams is going to be from a fantasy perspective, might pop off for a big game in a bye week. Tyrell Williams offers you a little bit more upside because it's an unknown. But I don't really see anything too crazy coming out of that. So if you need the safer floor, I would keep Williams. If you're looking for somebody that's like a lottery ticket that can propel your team, then I would probably keep Tyrell.
Okay. Ellie. Hey, Mr. Hollywood, who am I taking with pick number 7? It's kind of hard to say without knowing who the top 6 are, but if we can try to figure out based off ADP here. So we assume McCaffrey's gone, Cook's gone, Kamara's gone. Zeke's gone.
Henry.
I've seen Zeke there.
What?
Zeke could be there.
Zeke could be okay. Yeah, Zeke could be there.
I'd be targeting Devontae Adams, I think. 7.
Like Saquon could be there. Nick Chubb could be there, and Jones could
Nick
be
Chubb
there.
will definitely be there. No
Like-
doubt in my mind.
It's
So-
the Adams, Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler type.
Or you could go Kelsey if you wanted to go take the first.
Oh,
one
man.
on the board.
So who's your ideal pick at number 7? Let's just answer that question, and hopefully one of the names that we give her are there.
I took Adams at 6 in my last draft. I prefer Adams. You're getting the elite best player at his position. Safe pick. But if you want to chase the upside and Barkley's there, those are the two guys I would look at.
So whenever
From
we've
a-
been doing the mock drafts, and
Mhm.
from what I've seen, it's like, all right, like if you're gonna take a tight end, that's right at that bubble window where you can maybe get Kelsey in the 3rd round. You're probably not going to get Waller, and then you're going to have to take Kelsey as the 1st round pick if you're going to get him. You're not going to get him on the way back. So I think, in my opinion, it's like you take one of the high upside running backs. If Devontae Adams isn't there, you're going to have your choice of Hill, Diggs, Hopkins, Ridley on the turn back. So it's like if Devontae Adams is gone, I don't think you reach for a receiver at that point. It would just be see what happens on the other side of it. But to me, it seems like Devontae Adams, unless someone like Zeke falls. But I probably still would take Devontae Adams, like Drew said.
Yeah, for me, it's Zeke or Saquon. If one of those two gets to 7, or Devontae Adams if he's there, and so we're pretty much all in agreement. Like Devontae Adams is definitely worth that pick. I got him at 9 in a 10-team league, and then I got Kelsey coming back, and I was very happy with that. Even though I didn't get a running back until the 3rd round, my team didn't turn out too bad. So, Kelly, I also don't know how many teams you're talking about here. Do I think Barkley is risky? I think any pick is risky. Christian McCaffrey's going to go 1st overall, and he's risky. He didn't play most of last year. I just think that you look at Barkley as pretty much that next guy that sees like a similar workload as Christian McCaffrey, assuming he's healthy. Obviously, the quarterback situation there is not great, and I know they added Kenny Golladay. They paid him big money, as Joe and Drew always say, follow the money. But I still think that Saquon comes back, and especially in a 17-game season, is just that much more valuable. He looks good. Like I don't know if they're just gonna like immediately week 1 take the chains off him and let him roll.
They said today that he might not play week 1. It was kind of like a downgrade.
Who do they play? Who do they play week 1? They're buttering them up, they're keeping them on their toes. They play the Broncos. They're just keeping the Broncos on their toes with that. He's playing week 1. Kelly, if you pick Saquon, he doesn't play week 1, I'll send you $10. But only if you pick him. DJ Chark or Tyrell Williams, and then we got to get to fantasy football Tinder here.
Chark.
He's hurt yet.
He has the broken like finger, thumb, whatever, but I would still take Chark over Williams for sure.
There's only 8 people in this that you're talking about.
I would probably take Kelsey at that point then.
Yeah, because you're still gonna probably be able to get Chubb coming back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, all right, forget everything that I just said. You don't take Saquon. You can take Kelsey and then get your running back 1 with your 2nd pick. I hope it's Chark. He's my wide receiver too. Yeah, I mean, hopefully he gets back to like that 2018, 2019 production.
Yeah, 2019
with T-Law
season.
Yeah. All right, so this is going to be something for the first time that we do on here. Donnie and I did it in season 2 of the Around the 412 Fantasy Football Show. I hope you guys are ready. Drew and Joe do not know what I'm going to ask them in terms of these questions. However, I'm going to say a statement that not necessarily I believe is going to happen, just a blanket statement regarding fantasy football. These guys are going to say swipe right or swipe left on the idea of that happening. So if they swipe right, they agree. If they swipe left, they do not agree on that happening. All right, let's start off with something that we've kind of already touched on this show a little bit and have talked a lot about off of this show. specifically between the three of us, CeeDee Lamb will be the highest scoring Cowboys wide receiver this year.
First off, let me just say, why you got the married dudes playing Tinder online, man? We're gonna get murdered whenever we get off of this Zoom. I swipe left. I think Cooper's still the favorite target. I think that people see the upside in CD, and it's a lot of overhype. Cooper has been a top guy and an elite separator since he's been in the league. He was doing better than CD before Dak went down last year, and I don't think anything's going to change. So I'm going to swipe left.
As I said before, if I have to pay money to get a guaranteed match, I'm going to swipe right on CD every day. Like I know that there's a lot of hype coming in him, and there's no numbers to back it up, but the talent is just incredible. He's an incredible talent. The catches he's been making in training camp and during the preseason have been insane. And he's going to be lining up majority of the time in the slot against weaker corners. I think Dak's going to throw the ball a ton, and they're both going to be very viable fantasy wide receivers, obviously, but I think that CD outscores them this year.
So we want to touch on it in a little bit, but we might as well bring it up now. At the bottom of the screen, every show, as we roll through this entire season, we're going to have the fricker ticker. Right now, I got the top 10 wide receiver rankings rolling down there. Those are not ESPNs. Those are not CBS's. Those are not Yahoo's. They're not sleepers. Those are the Around the 412 Fantasy Football Show's cumulative rankings. So these are combined, how we rank these guys. You're going to notice CeeDee Lamb did come in at number 10, and that's because Drew and I both had him inside our top 10. In the notes, Joe said, I hate it. So you can see, I knew that this was going to be a polarizing topic here, and I'm curious as to what you guys think. So let us know in the comments whether you would swipe right or swipe left on that, whether you're watching us live right now or if you're watching us back later on. Either way, by the way, I would like for you guys to hit that thumbs up button on the video, leave us a subscribe to the channel, and like I said, leave a comment for us, whether it be about swiping right, swiping left. We're going to go through a couple of these so you can answer them on your own as well at home and let us know what you think. This next one, Pittsburgh, wearing the jersey right now. Swipe right or swipe left on the idea of Najee Harris finishing as a top 10 fantasy running back this season?
Drew, you can go first.
I'll swipe right again. I have Najee as my 10th ranked running back going into the season. I just think volume is just going to be king, and there's no running backs in that backfield behind him that are going to even touch his workload. I think that he's just going to get so much volume, and even though the line has some question marks, he's just going to touch the ball so much that he's going to find a way to get there in the top 10.
Man, I feel like I'm going to get booed off the show, but once again, he wasn't in my top 10, so I'm going to swipe left. Volume is king, but I think this offense is so balanced that it's going to impact his opportunities. The offensive line still has a lot of question marks, even though it's an entirely new offensive line. The injury to Banner, as well as who knows what's going to go on with the left tackle situation. I'm pretty concerned about that as a fan and as a fantasy player. And I also just tend to negatively view rookies. So I'm going to take the left, and if I have to hold that L, then it's all good things in my opinion. So I'll take it.
Yeah,
hard to get him in my top 10 though. I'll be honest with you. I had to hold.
Yeah, he didn't make our collective top 10. Actually, he's our honorable mention. He's number 11.
I had to hold out Aaron Jones, and I think with A.J. Dillon coming on a little bit at the end of last year, I think that'll be the difference between getting those two guys flipped.
I don't know, man. Pittsburgh kept 4 running backs. You don't think that they're going to eat into Najee's workload?
I don't know why Benny Snell's still on this.
All right, so I just want to give you guys a quick update. So I have the third pick in this Yinzers draft. I took Kamara 3rd overall. I'm on the clock right now, round 2, pick 8, and I'll be drafting Saquon Barkley. So feeling pretty good about the start to this draft.
Wow.
So yeah, we'll see what happens when we get back on the
Kamara and Saquon, huh?
Yeah, full PPR. We're sitting pretty.
Calvin Ridley going to be there on the way back?
It's possible. He's the top ranked player on Yahoo right now going in. I'm probably going to be targeting one of the receivers there, or if Waller sneaks back around. So we'll see where it goes, but pretty pumped about that start.
So Kelly is just watching this as she does her draft, I'm guessing as well. Staying on this topic, should I take Najee a little early, like at pick 10? See, you're in an 8-person league. Like, you're going to have the options that you're going to have available coming back down to you. Like, I mean, no one loves Najee as much as this show loves Najee, but it seems a little bit rich in an 8-person league to take him in the second round that early. Like, if you had a back end pick in the second, maybe.
Let me tell you a story. So In my 8-team league last week's draft,
Yeah.
my dad took Najee at number 4
Oh yeah.
overall, sent me a text message and said, "F the rankers, they don't know shit."
So you would be fine with taking him in that spot?
I was targeting him as my second round pick, but I was going to be in the middle of the pack, so he would have been near the top of the ranking. So that's an obvious one, but I don't know.
I don't think it's like egregious. I just think in an 8-person league, I would be looking at the options that are there and be like, am I really taking Najee over these guys?
What's her pick?
She has pick number 7.
Yeah, so
8-person league.
I was 6, and when it came back to me, it would have been a choice between him, Gibson, and I'm trying to think of the other player that would have been there. It would have been one of the wide receivers. I say it would have been Diggs. I think those are the 3 options I would have been looking at. I mean, I take Najee over Gibson with that lack of third down work, but you can argue either way with Diggs, obviously.
So I think the thing for me, sorry, I was drafting. So I did take Waller. So the next couple picks were Ridley, Mahomes, Jefferson, Josh Allen. So I snagged Waller there. I think there's
Mahomes and Josh Allen before Waller, huh?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of value for receivers in the 4th or 5th round. So I'm definitely going RB heavy for this scenario. But I think at the end of the day, fantasy football is supposed to be a little bit of fun. If you're a Steelers fan, I don't think I would take Najee number 1 overall. I don't think that I would take him in the front end of the first round. But if he's not a bad pick at like 12, 13. His ADP right now is at about 15. So like if that's going to make the season more enjoyable for you, then like go for it. Like you're not going to lose the draft for picking him a couple picks early because you know he's not going to be there on the flip side. So I say, Kelly, you should go for it. Like you want to do it. You probably wanted to do it in the first round, but I will give you the Joe Frick stamp of approval on that.
Yeah, and I will say if you take Kelsey or Adams at 7, like that makes it that much easier to take Najee at 10 because you're getting, your running back there. Like if you go running back in the first round and you have like a really good receiver, like say Diggs is there, are you going to pass up getting a wide receiver 1 to take a second running back like that? So if she gets Adams or Kelsey in round 1, I mean, I'm even more on board. It's fine. You can do it, Kelly. You have the round 4 and 2 stamp of approval for Najee at 10. You mentioned Calvin Ridley in that process there. So swipe right or swipe left, Calvin Ridley leads the league in targets this year.
I'll let you
Swipe
go
right.
Yeah.
Swipe right. I think that Calvin Ridley has a very good shot at being the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy this year. He took a giant leap forward going from his rookie to sophomore season. Julio's gone. They did add Pitts, but I think it's going to take a little bit for him to get into a rhythm there. But they're not a great team. They have no defense. They're going to be throwing the ball a lot, and he's going to be Matt Ryan's favorite target. So I could very well see this happening.
Oh, you got to see this. I got to put this comment up because Beefy was drafting a team for somebody the other day, and that was the top 4 picks he got for them.
Yeah. Glad I'm not
for anybody, yeah. Alvin Kamara, Najee Harris, Calvin Ridley, George Kittle.
Beautiful.
First 4 rounds. Yeah, Calvin Ridley, man. Like I said this too. I felt like he is going to lead the league in targets this year. That's why I put that on here for you guys to answer. Like Julio's gone. I understand the addition of Kyle Pitts, but like when Julio didn't play, Calvin Ridley was a wide receiver 1, like a legit wide receiver 1. And he already has that rapport with Matt Ryan. It might take Kyle Pitts a little bit of time to make that adjustment, if you will. I mean, he's a freak. I don't think it should take much time. But like Calvin Ridley, like somebody's doing an account for those targets. And I understand that Kyle Pitts is like automatically going to be the guy. But I think that Calvin Ridley steps into the role that Julio had in Julio's best years in Atlanta. Not saying that Matt Ryan's that same type of player anymore, but I think he's going to pepper a guy like Calvin Ridley with those targets.
Yeah, I'll smash that like button into the earth. My phone's going to crack in half.
Super like!
Yeah, when Julio's out, he averaged 11 targets, 7 catches, and 110 yards receiving, and half a touchdown. So he's going to kill it. I have him as my wide receiver too, behind Adams. That's
yeah. Collectively, we had him at 2. I think I had him at 3 personally, but yeah, he collectively was our number 2. And you can see the names down there right now. But okay, Okay, this one's a good one because it might lead into a little bit of discussion that we were starting to have in the group chat earlier. Trevor Lawrence doesn't finish as the QB1 amongst rookies.
Is this for total points or points per game?
Oh. We'll go points per game to make it because I see where you're going. Like Fields isn't starting game one.
Right.
Trey Lance, who knows what the situation is there. So, yeah, we'll go points per game.
I'll like that one too. I think that Justin Fields is going to be starting by week 2. I think that they don't want to throw Justin Fields out on Monday Night Football against the Rams. So I think that they're going to let Dalton go out there and sacrifice himself and die.
Get baptized by Aaron Donald and then
put him in half. Justin Fields, if he starts week 2, he's looking at a schedule, I think, of he plays the Bengals, the Raiders are in there, and the Lions. He has there's like a 4-game stretch in a row where they're playing very subpar defenses. I think that Fields is going to start earlier rather than later, and I think he's going to take off.
So you're saying that Fields is going to outperform Lawrence?
I think that his rushing ability is going to change, or he's going to outscore him based on his rushing ability.
Who's outscoring who?
I think Fields is outscoring Lawrence.
Okay.
I mean, the Jaguars' situation is very game script dependent. I think that they could be throwing the ball a ton, and maybe Lawrence is going to maybe average 20, 25 points a game. But I still think with rushing is key with their quarterbacks. I think that Fields is going to rush the ball a ton this year. It's close, though. It's very close, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this before, but I feel like Trevor Lawrence, he's kind of like the most underhyped number 1 pick like ever. Like no one's really talked about him. Even all last year when he was at Clemson, it was kind of like, all right, well, he's still the guy. Like he's gonna go. And then it's like he's the number 1 undisputed pick, but like still not really getting a lot of love. Someone that hasn't really gotten a ton of love either is Zach Wilson, the number 2 pick. Like everybody's kind of anointed Fields and Lance as like the next 2, but Zach Wilson's been great in the preseason. I don't think that the Jets have much of a formidable rushing attack. So I am going to say that Wilson ends up being the most points per game out of all. And he's probably got the least hype. So I think that's what's going to happen. Thank you, Tyler. I appreciate that.
No, he's going to be – the comments are about to blow up just from him.
Justin Fields has Allen Robinson that he's throwing the ball to. That's going to help him so much compared to those other guys. That's why I give Fields with his rushing ability that edge, because he can just throw that ball up to Allen Robinson and just be like he's out there somewhere.
I mean, Jacoby Myers better, but I see what you're saying.
Oh, I didn't even think about Mac too. I mean, he's looked pretty good in the preseason as well. So, I mean, it's the NFC least experienced division right now. Just all the young guns just getting after it.
How much of that is playing into it as well? Like, are we looking at the competition here, like going against the AFC East as opposed to like, look at the teams that Lance would have to play against should he be the starter?
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, if you look at the defenses in the AFC East, I mean, New England is returning a lot of starters that they missed last year due to COVID. Miami had a surprising top-10 defense, and the Bills have a strong defense. So the only real question mark there is the Jets. I don't think that, like, if you're going to go for, like, bad defensive teams, like, I'm thinking, like, NFC East is going to be, like, the worst by far.
Right.
And then maybe, like, the AFC South, like, they're not really that big on defense there either. But I think that I don't think that plays. If anything, that's
who really look at Fields in the NFC North. I mean,
true.
The Bears might be the best defense, and that's the one that he's on. That's the team he's on. So he's not going to be going against them. I mean, the Vikings. I understand like Daniil Hunter coming back. That obviously helps him out. Patrick Peterson's there now, although he's past his prime. Harrison Smith's still there, but like Green Bay. Are they really better on defense? I mean, they have some pass rush ability. Jair Alexander's there.
Fields is going to outscore all those other guys just in 2 games against the Lions.
Yeah. We'll just put this up real quick. And we can move on to our last swipe right, swipe left thing, which is swipe right or swipe left on the idea that the field, literally any other player at this position, unseats Travis Kelce as tight end 1.
Logan Thomas. I'm just kidding.
Oh, man.
It's tough. Anytime that it's like one player or the field, But like, it's been what, 5 straight years now that Kelsey's been the number 1 tight end. Like,
it would take bad news, in my opinion. It's going to take an injury.
It would really take Father Time, probably. I mean, he's just so good. He's such a pivotal part of the offense. I think the only way.
we can still hear you.
Oh, that's right. That's right. They're different. So the only thing that could do it is, so if you look at the receptions last year and the yardage, Waller wasn't that far off, but he only had like 6 touchdowns. So in order for it to happen, like, it's gonna really be like all right, Waller has a big touchdown year, but do you believe in Derek Carr or do you believe in Mahomes? Like, I'll probably take
Derek Carr had a pretty good year last year.
Right.
Now, not necessarily from a fantasy standpoint, but like, he helped Waller get to that level.
Tyler said what I was going to say.
Freiermuth?
TJ Hawkinson.
Oh, the other Tyler.
He could get so much volume that who knows, but I think that's going to take an injury from a Mahomes type injury or a Kelsey type injury to unseat that.
Yeah, I would be swiping left personally on this, mainly because I also have Travis Kelce in my fantasy team. So we obviously don't want to see
so
any of
I'm
that
up
happen.
right now, 5th round, pick 3. I have Cooper Kupp, Amari Cooper, Robert Woods, Tyler Lockett. Trying to figure out what I want to do here. I think Amari is going to finish better. Out of Woods and Kupp, I probably like Woods a little bit better. But it's so hard to know.
Anybody but Tyler Lockett's good in my opinion.
Yeah, we knew that one.
Notice he didn't make Tyler Lockett did not make the wide receiver rankings of ours.
That's because I had him at wide receiver 50.
Even if Joe and I would have had him at 1.
I said that Amari Cooper was going to be the number 1 receiver for Dallas, so I'm going to take him.
Yeah, you're a coward if you don't take him.
Let's do a board bet. If Amari Cooper outscores CD this year, I'll buy you a DC4 LT.
Okay. Done. As long as it's not one with you on it.
That's obviously.
I thought we were about to see a jersey bet. If CeeDee Lamb outscores Cooper, Joe has to buy Drew a CD jersey. If it's the other way,
I'm not going to
buy. You never rock. You have CD on a fantasy team, don't you? You never rock your fantasy players' jerseys.
Nah, unless I take them a championship, I'll consider
it. Okay. All right. So, like I said, we did do some top 10 rankings that are scrolling at the bottom. You will see these scroll at the bottom weekly. That way, we don't have to answer like start-sit questions when it comes to like a certain position. Like no one has to ask us which running back would you start. Like it's going to be at the bottom. Anyways, the reason that we did it for this week. This is just our opening top 10 rankings for how it will finish at the end of the season, not week 1. Is there anything to you guys that maybe like stood out while you were doing this or that you're surprised by finishing? I want to bring up the one. That's why I got the tight ends up right now. Joe, you're expecting a big season from Jaquan Johnson in New Orleans. Yeah. And you're saying Jared Cook 2.0. What do we got going on there that's making you believe this?
Yeah, so if you look at New Orleans right now, you have Michael Thomas, who's out for at least the first 5 weeks of the season, so he's on the PUP list. They have a bye week in week 6, so it's only a 5-week miss. But then after that, they still have nothing. If you look at what Jared Cook did last year, like he was a pretty big part of the offense, and I think they're going to need some more targets to feed. Callaway looked pretty solid, and a lot of people were thinking that, all right, maybe Troutman's going to be that guy that takes that over. Now, if we look at what happened in the preseason, we'll see that Troutman blocked pretty much all the passing snaps or a good majority of the snaps, and Johnson was pretty much lined up as a receiver. So if I'm thinking about opportunity to be a top 2 target on his team, Johnson has that ability. He's getting lined up a lot on the outside or in the slot, and you know that it's going to be a passing team. I mean, yes, they have a great running back in Kamara, but he's really an additional pass catcher more so than a between the tackles, ground and pound kind of runner. So I think with that, I think that he has some upside. There's obviously going to be someone that slides in there, kind of like a Tonyan last year that has so many touchdowns that you're not able to really just stop that. But I mean, Tonyan had less than 70 targets and had 10 touchdowns. Like you can't really predict that. So I'm going to take the guy that's getting the targets in the preseason, that has a path to top 2 targets on the team. And that's also why I had Henry on my list as well. I think that he has that opportunity just with the way that the receiver situation is right now.
When Jameis got named the starter, I went and added Juwan Johnson off waivers in our dynasty league because he loves to throw to the tight end, and I support everything that Joe's saying. I think Juwan Johnson's going to come out of nowhere. He used to be a receiver at Penn State, and he can catch the ball.
Right.
Yeah. And
Well,
that's
if
one of
that
the
does
things,
happen,
I mean, you see now that a lot of times these guys are listed as tight ends, but they're playing effectively receiver. They're used as like an additional slot guy. That's my biggest beef with Goddard right now, is that they still have Ertz, and now Goddard becomes the guy that's the additional blocker when they need it, and then Ertz is the guy that gets to be the guy in the slot. When Ertz wasn't playing, Goddard was getting 10 targets a game because he became that slot guy, and they had someone else random blocking. But then you lose that. So it's like I have a lot of like skepticism there, like with the Philly situation. So it's definitely interesting to see how that's going to shake out. But
well, you mentioned we've mentioned it on the show before, like with Noah Fant. That's another guy that like we want to see line up more like as a big slot guy and actually run routes, and Denver just refuses to do it. And there's not even another tight end that's doing that. They're just literally not having anybody do it. Mm-mm. So that's obviously the one that jumps out on the tight end rankings that you see at the bottom of your screen. Other than that, relatively standard. Evan Ingram, I have an asterisk next to him in my rankings just because a little bit of an injury there. We don't know exactly what's up with that yet. But I feel like anywhere that you go, you'll see pretty similar rankings there. Was there another one that we wanted to go to maybe talk about? Let's just talk about wide receivers real quick as well, just because when you talk about fantasy receivers, it's like, especially this year, I don't know if you guys feel the same way. I'll just say my piece on it. Like, I feel really good saying like the top 5 are wide receiver ones. And then I feel like after that, they're all pretty similar for a while there.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely tiers to it. I mean, you can almost put Devontae Adams in a tier on his own just for how dominant that he is. But yeah, if you're going to look at like that top 5, not a lot of differences there. They're definitely the ball hog on that team. And it really is going to come down to who scores the most touchdowns out of that group. So you can't really go wrong with a lot of those picks. And I think without injuries, there's a lot of safety in those picks. So if you're a back half of the first round kind of player, that top set of picks has already been done. Then you're in a really good position to take somebody that's going to have a high floor and can do a lot of good for you, especially in those PPR leagues. But as you get beyond Ridley, then you really have a lot of interesting questions about who's going to take the next step. Do you take the guy that's going to get peppered with targets like a Keenan Allen or Allen Robinson, or who's that young guy that's going to take that next step? So they say wide receivers in their third year, that's when they take that big leap. You have a lot of guys entering that territory. So how are they going to fare out coming into this season?
I wanted to bring up that blind resume that I sent you guys the other night and see if anybody in the chat can guess who these guys are.
I might have completely missed that, to be honest with you.
No, we talked about it. So you saw it. Tyreek Hill had 5.8 receptions per game, 6 top 10 finishes last year at age 27. There's another player at age 25 that had identical numbers and would have been nearly the same amount of targets for the entire season had he not missed some time last year.
Hey, Drew, guess what? I just drafted him with the 6th round, 9th pick.
Don't tell him.
I won't.
That's blurry.
That's the least useful graphic, I think, in the history of podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if I had it to put up on the screen.
Hey, I sent it to you. Be prepared.
You sent it to me on my phone? Because that's...
I'll send it to you again.
No, I'm saying it even so. Like, yeah, I have it on my phone. But I'm saying I would need it on my computer to pull up on my screen.
Get your iMessage on there. Come on, rookie.
I have a PC, not a Mac.
Oh.
All right. Anyway.
All right. So Deontay Johnson had 5.9 receptions per game, 5 top 10 finishes last year at age 25. And he was, 14 targets short of what Tyreek Hill had last year. And he missed game and a half, 2 games. And he's going as a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 in drafts.
Yeah.
I have him as my top 10 wide receiver going into this year. Total points.
If you looked at the bottom of the list, he's our honorable mention. Although Joe might put him as 10 and take off CeeDee Lamb.
No. I don't know if I'd go that far.
I just thought you wanted to get CeeDee Lamb off there at all costs.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's true. I think somebody that I could see sneaking into that list is one of the Rams players for sure.
Yeah.
Mike Evans always seems to find a way into being like a top 10 receiver no matter what. So yeah, I mean, Deontay has a very logical path from like repeatability and target share. It's just how is the offense going to change under Matt Canada? That's going to be the biggest thing to decide with him. But yeah, I just drafted him, so I obviously don't feel too bad about it. And then took Prescott on the turn there.
Where did you get him?
I don't know what your team's looking like, but it sounds just based off you doing it on here that
yeah. So
it's
I have
ridiculous.
Prescott, Kamara, Barkley, McLaren, Cooper, Waller, Deontay Johnson.
Terry McLaurin and Deontay were fringe top 10 wide receivers.
Right.
Do you actually have to play these games, or are they just going to give you the money for the prize winnings like right now?
I don't know, but I think the saddest part is that since we've started, Jared Judy has come up the ranks so much that I don't think I'm going to get him on the way back here. But you know what? You got to do what you got to do, I guess.
You got to do what you got to do. Follow the money.
Follow the money.
Trying to think of some other things that we've said on here. Either way, I think that's about it. Unless you guys got something else.
Yeah, nothing else too crazy here. Just make sure you know your rules before getting into your drafts. It's a big week for a lot of teams, so stay close, keep your ear to the ground, and just have fun with it. I mean, I think a lot of people get super stressed out about what's happening, and it doesn't become fun, but ultimately it is supposed to be a fun thing. So take the people you like, trust your gut, and yeah, we'll be here to answer all the questions that y'all have. So it's going to be a good time.
Yeah, keep tweeting to us. We love answering your questions, and hopefully we can get that account exploding a little bit more so more people know that not to tweet at the Around the 412 main account.
yeah, we've been getting a little bit of that, but yeah, follow us. I will have that in the description. That's AT412 FF show, the official fantasy football show of Around the 412. But we do have our separate Twitter account for that. I will also have Joe's personal Twitter account, although he has it on the screen anyway. Drew's personal Twitter account and my own personal Twitter account in the description as well. You can tweet at us at any time. If it's before like 6 a.m., Drew will answer it for us. But other than that, thanks everybody for tuning into this episode, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.